Morning. My name is Kunga Nyima, and I am one of the Dharma teachers at the Grand Rapids Buddhist Temple. This is a recording of my talk that I gave last week. We had some audio problems, so providing a reversion of it for the Zoom audience. So the title of my talk today is Loving Speech and Deep Listening. I chose this title of the talk because this is what Thich Nhat Hanh calls the fourth precept in his reinterpretation in the Sutra of the Chant, the 5 mindfulness training. I like this name for the fourth precept a lot because the original precept is just to refrain from lying, where this version gives us a much broader image of what that precept could actually cover in our real life beyond just not telling lies. It includes loving speech and also deep listening, sort of compassionate speech and empathetic listening. So I wanted to start off my talk today by reviewing that loving speech and deep listening mindfulness training that Thich Nhat Hanh provided. I'll read that to you. And then I will follow that up by talking about an aspect of the fourth precept that we don't often think about. Maybe a way that we're violating that precept unknowingly every day in our everyday life. Lying to ourselves, I guess I could say. And then I'm going to end the talk by talking about loving speech and deep listening in a broader context in relationship to the communications that we provide to each other in the Sangha and in our everyday life, and how we might use these guidelines to keep those conversations and communications as skillful as they can be. So let's start out here with the 5 mindfulness trainings, a loving speech and deep listening. Aware of the suffering caused by unmindful speech and the inability to listen to others, I am committed to cultivating loving speech and compassionate listening in order to relieve suffering and to promote reconciliation and peace in myself and among other people, ethnic and religious groups, and nations. Knowing that words can create happiness or suffering, I am committed to speaking truthfully, using words that inspire confidence, joy, and hope. When anger is manifesting in me, I am determined not to speak. I will practice mindful breathing and walking in order to recognize, look deeply into my anger. I know that the roots of anger can be found in my wrong perceptions and lack of understanding of the suffering in myself and the other person. I will speak and listen in a way that can help myself and the other person to transform suffering and see the way out of difficult situations. I am determined not to spread news that I do not know to be certain, not to utter words that can cause division or discord. I will practice right diligence to nourish my capacity for understanding love, joy, and inclusiveness, and gradually transform anger, violence, and fear that is deep in my consciousness. So that's Thich Nhat Hanh's take on the fourth precept, which is to avoid lying. And the first thing I wanted to talk about today was to consider the fourth precept, not lying, and how it might be a part of our everyday lives in the kind of self-talk we use with ourselves on a normal basis. Traditionally, in the practice sitting meditation, is an opportunity for us to look a little bit more closely, put like a spotlight on the type of self-talk we have going on in our mind on a regular basis. We can think of these thoughts that pop up during our meditations as really just our ego talking to us. According to the Tibetan Buddhist teacher Chogyam Trungpa, basically ego is a psychological bank or pool in which we store memories and ideas, so that whenever we're running out of external entertainment, we could churn them up and entertain ourselves. It's like an animal with no food to eat who burps out the food from its stomach and begins to chew it all over again. So that image that Chogyam Trungpa has of the animal, like maybe a cow or a horse or something, burping up food and re-chewing it, just a really great image, I think, to think about in relationship to our ego. Another image we could think of is, baby birds at a nest where the mother or father bird goes off and then gathers insects and bugs and stuff and brings those back and regurgitates them back to the baby bird so they can eat, provide them with nourishment. So if we think about our sitting meditation, we can think of our six senses as being like the mother or father bird, going out in the world, gathering food and information for our mind, our ego. And when we're sitting on the cushion, we're gathering visual information from the room we're in. We're gathering information through our ears about what kind of sounds are going on at this time. We're understanding, we're experiencing what the room smells like. We're tasting saliva in our mouth. And we have thoughts, going through our mind. And as we're sitting there, we're starting out, we're just being aware of all these different sensations. But pretty soon, our mind, our ego will start to get bored with that information. And then all this information that's been gathered up from our life, from not just this sitting here, but from all of our history, is like food that is our mind. It just spits back out at us so that we can chew on it a little bit longer. Might be memories of the past, might be things that we're planning for the future, might be body sensations that make us think about, oh, I can't sit here any longer. I'm really sore, I'm really uncomfortable, I'm really hungry, I'm really sleepy. And these thoughts, these feelings kind of lead on to other thoughts and feelings. Oh, I'm sleepy because I didn't sleep well enough last night. I'm not going to sleep well tonight either. And you might start being anxious about that. It could be any number of things like that. So the instruction in our meditation is when these thoughts pop up and start to distract us, that as soon as we notice that we're thinking about something and we're not just being aware of our sitting practice, is that we label that thought as thinking, and then go back to just being generally aware of everything. So I wanted to share another quote from Chogyam Trungpa. This is from his book, Personal Liberation, which is a collection of seminary talks that he gave for the Vajrayana seminary. I'm not sure how long ago he gave these, probably in the 80s. But one of his students, Judith Leaf, has compiled these into a book that came out in the last few years. And he had a whole chapter about labeling thoughts, which I've been sharing with our Wednesday night meditation group. And I thought that would be really nice to share that with you all as well. So in meditation practice, you regard everything that takes place in your mind, every little detail, every little explosion as thinking. You're not trying to separate thoughts from emotions. If you feel angry at somebody, if you have a sudden burst of passion, your own private porn show, if you're going through cookbooks and visualizing beautiful food or drink, if you're on the coast swimming in the ocean, or walking barefoot on the sand, all these little outbursts of anger or passion are regarded as thinking. Metaphysical dialogues or debates, evaluation of art and music, questions of reality or enlightenment, ideas of mathematics and science, ideas of love and friendship. All of those philosophical questions that come into your head are regarded as just thinking. Even if you have very dedicated thoughts or dharmic thoughts, they're still regarded as just thinking. So when I was thinking about the fourth precept to refrain from lying, for some reason it made me start thinking about our meditation practices and labeling thoughts. It's one of our ideas in meditation is that we're going to take these skills that we learn on the cushion and we bring them into our everyday life. Okay. So when we're on the cushion, we're trying to constantly bring our attention, our mind back to the present moment and be aware of what's going on in the present moment. So in our everyday life, if we're distracted or daydreaming and we're not involved, we're not in the present moment, then in a way that we're kind of replacing the present moment with something from the past or some planning or from the future. And that's kind of a violation of the truth of what's going on right now. So if we get back to our analogy of the sitting practice, So here at the temple, Grand Rapids Buddhist Temple, when we have students do their sitting meditation, encourage them to sit in a comfortable position, monitor their breathing. And if something comes up that distracts them from that, a thought or a feeling, they just label it as thinking. As soon as they come back, realize it, and then come back again to their awareness of the present moment. And so this is something we can also do when we're not on the cushion, when we're out in our everyday life. If we're out walking or driving or, having a meal, having a conversation, socializing, any of those things, there's an opportunity for us to practice our mindfulness and be more present in that moment. So I guess it's, you might think that, well, when I'm in my everyday life and I'm not on the cushion, I'm always aware of what's going on. I don't really get distracted by my daydreams or anything. And I would say that's probably not true. There probably are times when you are daydreaming and you just don't realize it. For example, I know that oftentimes when I'm driving, that I will leave work and arrive at home and have no idea, how I got from one place to the other. I don't know how many cars were on the road. I wasn't paying attention to the weather. I was just off in my own mind, doing some type of daydream or maybe planning what I was going to do when I got home. And, relying on my automatic responses to the environment to keep me safe in the car and to get me home. I remember there, so I don't have to pay attention to it or think about it. And I would say there's many things in our life where we engage in activities like that. Another one might be eating, where we kind of know what to do. We feel like we don't really have to pay attention to it, and we just go off and daydream and distract ourselves. And, that's not necessarily saying that daydreaming or planning for the future or fantasizing are bad things that we should never do. It's just that we shouldn't do them when we're supposed to be doing something else. So I'm a hospice social worker, and when I'm visiting with a patient and they're telling me their story and their concerns, I shouldn't be thinking about what I'm going to be doing when I get home, or what I need to be doing with my next patient, or what I want to be doing this weekend. In a way, I'm kind of lying to myself about what's going on in the present reality when I'm not paying attention to what's going on. And I think oftentimes the person who we're talking to will realize that we're not really engaged, and they'll bring our attention to that. So the goal is, with this idea, it's just to be more aware of yourself in your everyday life. Whenever you can think of it, just bring yourself back to the present moment and just think, am I engaged with what's going on right now? Or am I taking a little vacation, planning something for the future, worrying about something from the past? We can certainly do those things. We just need to set aside specific times for that. My wife and I like to plan for retirement. We like to plan for vacations. And so you have to do that if you're going to go out of town or something. And we'll set aside times to do that, rather than, trying to squeeze that in when I'm supposed to be doing something else. So that's what I wanted to say about that, the fourth precept. I wanted us to think about that as a way of keeping ourselves more honest in our everyday moment-to-moment life, trying to bring that idea of labeling your thoughts into your everyday life, off of the cushion, so that you can be more mindful and more present for the people in your life. The other part I wanted to talk about has to do with how we might apply the many ideas presented in the loving speech and deep listening mindfulness training into our everyday life in a meaningful way. And we came up with a policy for loving speech and deep listening communication here at the Grand Rapids Buddhist Temple, which I wrote up. And we used the idea of that chant that I said at the beginning as the aspiration. And then we have some information about how you could actually bring that into your everyday life. And I borrowed the acronym THINK, THINK, from my work as a way to do that. And so the idea where I work is that if we think before we speak, then we're more likely to speak in a positive way, in a skillful way, than if we just think, or if we just speak without thinking. So each one of these letters in the word think, T-H-I-N-K, have a little suggestion for you to think about before you speak. Okay? So I'm just going to read from these a little bit. T stands for truth with wisdom and compassion. It is wise to remember that our idea of truth is colored by our perceptions, which are limited by our point of view. We can never know the whole truth because we can never know all the causes and conditions of any moment. To act out of compassion is to recognize that all beings are acting in ways to relieve their suffering and achieve happiness. It is not compassionate to use the truth in such a way that increases suffering for another being. So in following with this idea, I'm going to assume the best of everyone. Everyone is really trying their best and has positive intent. I'm going to assume that from the beginning. And when I give feedback to others, I'm going to keep that in mind, and I'm going to try and provide feedback that's going to help to build their confidence and is compassionate to their struggles, because it's not always helpful or skillful to just blurt out the truth if you're going to provide it in a way that's just going to cause a lot of suffering. H, helpful. The first paramita is dana, generosity. In communication, we should be generous with our knowledge and time. To be generous is to aspire to be helpful to others in all our conversations with them. So I was thinking about this one in relationship to our electronic communications. Sometimes I think that all of us receive emails from people and we feel like the person is asking us a question that they should already know the answer to. Or if they don't know the answer, they shouldn't be asking us for it. They should know the right person to go to the answer for. And we get a little frustrated with that person, and we might want to, give them a response that's not so kind. So the idea for this one is to be generous with our time and our help, and whenever someone comes to us with some question about how to do something or about something, that we should do our best to provide them with a meaningful and helpful response. I is for inspiring. Awakening and truth are always before our eyes and within our reach. Awakening is the pure and sincere heart of practice itself, and truth is the spirit of practice, that all sentient beings are Buddha. Accordingly, there is no awakening or truth outside common, ordinary people and everyday tasks. This is from the daily admonitions for Dharma students that we use in our Bodhisattva class. So the idea here is to think about how you are communicating, how is that inspiring Buddha nature in yourself and others. And so it can be, it really calls a lot upon us to say something inspiring to someone else. And if we're tired, if we're stressed, if we're rushed, it can be very difficult to do that in our communications. So I think the main idea with this one is that before you speak or respond to someone, think about what you're saying. And if you're not in a condition to respond thoughtfully and skillfully, then maybe just respond and got your message, and then maybe give yourself some time, hours or a day to respond. We can, it's not often that someone will complain that we didn't give them the answer they want right away if we did respond that we got the question. But if we respond quickly and we say something we regret, people will hold on to those things for days, months, years. People remember things that were said out of anger so the idea here is to try avoid that kind of emotion that's not helpful and just take more time to consider how we might be inspiring with our communications. The next one is necessary. When anger is manifesting in me, I am determined not to speak. I will practice mindful breathing and walking in order to recognize and to look deeply into my anger. I know that the roots of anger can be found in my wrong perceptions and lack of understanding of the suffering in myself and in the other person. So this is right from the loving speech and deep listening 5 mindfulness training that I read at the beginning. And this is right in following with inspiring. and that thinking about how we respond to people and choosing a response rather than just reacting out of the emotional state that we're in. The last one, K, is kind. The sixth Bodhisattva precept states, do not speak of the misdeeds of others, but seek to understand them with sympathy. It is not kind to speak about people behind their back or to label them using stereotypes or personal prejudice. Strive to be generous in your evaluation of others' behaviors and actions, and always assume that others are acting with their best intentions in your communication. So I like to think that all of these different parts of the loving speech and deep listening guidelines are kind of interrelated and interpenetrating of each other. So the truthfulness of our response, the helpfulness of our response, the inspiringness of it, whether or not it's necessary, and how kind it is, those are all interconnecting with each other. So when we're trying to be truthful with someone, we also want to think about how we are going to be kind when we're providing that truth. We're going to be thinking about how necessary is it to give them that truth right now or ever, and does that truth inspire them? The same with the next one. With being helpful. Is the response we're giving them helpful to them? If we're telling them the truth, are we providing it in a helpful way? Is that response, giving them the information they want in a way that's going to build them up, to support them? So each one of the THINK of the acronym is meant to kind of interconnect and interrelate with each other. So I hope this has been helpful to you as a different way to thinking about the fourth mindfulness precept to avoid lying. Thank you very much for viewing this talk today.